And these little marks also, there's some sort of parallel to acting, I think. Because I remember Julian, sometimes I'd get very frustrated, and like, ah! And he'd say, there's no such thing as a bad mark. The idea being that you have to be present for each mark, and then the marks start to work together to make something that you couldn't even necessarily imagine, because until you make the one mark, you can't make the next mark. And that's very much like performing. So I identified with that on that level. So the painting was something physical in my body. It wasn't an intellectual thing. As Van Gogh says in the film and wrote in his letters, when he's thinking, he stops. When he's painting, he stops thinking. So I was entering that world. And this idea of painting the light was really painting what I see, not painting a representation or what I thought had to account for that thing in front of me. So he really changed how I see, and that's not just painting, not just making things, but how perception, really. And that was a key, because Van Gogh is very haunted by this feeling, this vision he has, and he wants to share it. And I think that's an interesting impulse. That's a classic artist's impulse.
Good answer.
Thanks, Coach.
I mean, one thing that we've had the privilege of is that we've been able to share something that we made with an audience. That's something that he never had. And, but in another sense, the movie is something, it's about painting being above recognition, above criticism. And the fact is that when you're an artist, I think when you're younger, you want agreement from people, whatever practice you're involved in. Later, you realize that what you're doing is the thing, not the agreement from other people. And one of the things I kind of wanted to disprove in a way was, I think Van Gogh was very successful. He accomplished what he wanted to do. He expressed the inexpressible. And so we've projected on top of, these bourgeois concepts about success, about the people recognizing him. At a certain moment he said, I thought I was supposed to educate people or show people how to look at the world, but I stopped thinking about that. Now I just think about my relationship with eternity. And then Matthew Amory says, what do you mean by eternity? He says, well, the time to come. He says, so painting is your gift to the world. Maybe. But I think it was a gift to himself. And I think at that moment when Willem walks through that vegetable field, and then he puts dirt on his face and he sits up and he smiles, that guy is exactly in the right place at the right time. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what you get when you get here on this terminal sense of life that we all inherit, but for that moment he was absolutely where he wanted to be. And I think his communion with nature was an amazing thing. And another thing that Van Gogh said was, after seeing The Marriage at Cana, which is actually a painting that's in the movie by Veronese, it's at the Louvre, we were shooting in there. And he said, well, the color in my painting doesn't come from nature, it comes from my palette. And so people are always looking for actually Arles is a protagonist in the movie. The weather, the light, nature, and the wind. You can't get away from it. But his version of that, it goes through him, so the colors are really not realistic. The colors are something that comes from him. And he also said something that was kind of amazing, where he said, how to achieve anomalies, inaccuracies, and refashionings of reality to where what comes out is lies, but lies that are more truthful than literal fact. So he had a painted version of life that he was ascribing to, which he left us. And maybe that fragmentation that's in the paintings, because you could kind of see all the marks in the paintings, and maybe that's what drove people crazy. They didn't look finished, or they looked disparate in their way, but that is what you see. You keep looking at the paintings, And they're unendingly interesting because they form in front of your eyes. And maybe it was a radical idea at the time that people couldn't really handle, but I think that he did have, I guess, the camaraderie that he had with Gauguin, even though they fought and Gauguin left. I mean, I wanted to show that friendship was really important and that having that dialogue was something that was meaningful.
Well,